Morning had broken quietly, the pale light slipping through the hospital windows. Just an hour had passed since the doctor had last spoken, yet time had moved slowly, wrapped in tension and uncertainty. Suddenly, a nurse burst out from Jungkook's room, her steps hurried and eyes wide. She ran off to find the doctor. Within minutes, both the doctor and nurse returned, entering the room with urgency. Moments later, the doctor emerged and scanned the hallway. Doctor, who is Ryan? He asked, voice calm but urgent. Ryan stood up from her chair, her heart pounding in her chest. Ryan, I am Ryan. The doctor gave her a small nod. Doctor, the patient had regained consciousness. He is asking for you. You may go in. Her breath caught in her throat. Without speaking another word, Ryan stepped toward the room. Each step felt heavy, full of anticipation, fear, and hope. She opened the door slowly and entered. The room was filled with the steady beeping of machines and sterile scent of antiseptic. Medical equipment surrounded the bed. Monitors blinked quietly, and Jungkook lay amidst a tangle of wires and tubes, his body fragile and pale. She moved closer. Her footstep made a soft sound on the floor. Jungkook, hearing her, slowly turned his head toward her. His eyes met hers. With great effort, he tried to speak, but his voice was barely a whisper. Still, her name escaped his lips. Jungkook, Wyan. He weakly lifted his hand toward her, but lack of strength to reach, Wyan gently took it in both of hers, holding it firmly. Wyan, the doctor said you should not speak, she whispered, tears welling up again. But Jungkook shook his head faintly. He had waited too long. He needed to say what had been buried for years. Jungkook, I'm sorry, he said, his voice strained and dry. After our marriage, I never gave you a real moment. I was so lost in my duties, so consumed with the weight of responsibility that I forgot how to be a husband. I never gave you the support you deserved. Why stood silently, eyes lower, his word cutting through her. Jungkook, I thought I would have the chance to start over, but I could not. For a moment I thought I would not survive, and I don't know if I will get another chance to say this. He paused, his breath growing heavier. Jungkook, I'm sorry for forcing you into marriage, for never asking what you truly wanted, but there is still time. If fates allow it, I wanted to start again with you. I wanted to tell you this that night that I love. His voice fluttered. He gasped softly, coughing violently. The monitors began to be faster, alarmed. Machine blinked. One panicked, calling for help. Doctors rushed in. The lead doctor quietly injected something into his IV. Moments later, Jungkook slipped into sleep, his body finally calming. The doctor turned to Wyan. Doctor, he should not have been allowed to talk. The patient is out of immediate danger, but he still requires intensive care. He will need to stay in the hospital for a while. Wine nodded silently. The doctor gave her a final glance before walking out. Left alone, Wine looked at Jungkook's sleeping face. She didn't speak. She didn't cry. She just watched him, memorizing every detail, every breath. Then slowly, without a sound, she turned and walked out of the room. Wine stepped out of Jungkook's hospital room, her face pale and eyes heavy with emotion. As soon as she exited, she saw Somi waiting quietly outside. Somi gently placed a hand on Wine's shoulder. Somi, Jungkook is awake now, she said softly. Come here, you need to freshen up, eat something, and rest. Wine nodded without a word. They returned home in silence. Wine went to her room, washed up and changed. A few moments later, a maid knocked lightly on the door. Maid, ma'am, dinner is ready. Would you like to eat now? Wine, I will be down shortly, she replied. Descending the stairs, she entered the dining room where Somi was already seated. The two women quietly shared a meal. Afterward, Somi spoke gently. Somi, let's go check on the babies. Together they made their way to the nursery. As soon as they stepped inside, the twins spotted them and lit up with joy. The little one told it over excitedly. Wine leaned and gathered them into her arms, smiling as they cried happily. Somi stood back, watching in silence. It felt like time had paused. There was something deeply comforting, almost magical, about how lovingly Wine held the children. Her touch was natural, protective. The babies cooed and made soft sounds, trying to form words, their eyes fixed on her as if she was the center of their world. Tears welled up in Somi's eyes. She could not hold it in anymore. Somi, you have suffered so much, haven't you? Wan looked up at her, a little confused by the sudden emotion. Somi, raising these babies all alone. They were so small, she said, her voice trembling. Wine gently brushed her finger through the baby's hair. Wine, in the beginning, yes, it was hard, but over time, I didn't even realize when they became mine. I could not tell when they stopped being someone else's children and became my own. Somi sat down beside her. Somi, I'm sorry, I don't know Jungkook had married. I don't know you were his wife. I always want to meet you, but somehow it never happened. Wine, it's okay, she said softly. But her voice carried a distant tone, and she seemed emotionally elsewhere. Somi noticed the flatness, but assumed it was due to the recent trauma surrounding Jungkook. Wanting to lighten the mood, she tried something else. Somi, so tell me, when did my brother propose to you? How did the two of you get married? Honestly, when I heard that he was married, I could not believe it. She said it dramatically, flopping onto the floor with her hands on her face, making a theatrical pout. Wine, unable to resist, let out a small laugh. Wine, nothing special happened, she said. Somi, nothing? Don't tell me you two didn't even go on a honeymoon, she gasped. Wine shook her head. Somi, what? He didn't do anything? How did you two even get married? At first, Wan tried to avoid the topic, focusing instead on the children, but Somi wasn't letting it go. She pressed again and again until Wan finally gave in and told her the entire story, from the way the marriage happened to how she came to live with Jungkook. After hearing everything, Somi grew visibly upset. Somi, don't worry, now I am here, she said, her eyes glinting with determination. I will make sure Jungkook gets exactly what he deserves for this. He may be the strongest mafia boss in the world, but I am still his sister. She flexed her arms in a ridiculous show of strength, could not help it. She burst into laughter, a full genuine laugh. Somi smiled in relief. It had been a long time since she had seen one smile like that. The babies, now sleepy, began to rub their eyes. Wine and Sumi carefully tucked them into their tiny beds, humming lullabies until they dozed off peacefully. And for the first time in what felt like forever, there was a brief, warm moment of peace. Elsewhere, in the shadows of an opulent yet ominous mansion, Shin sat calmly in his grand leather chair, fingers stapled beneath his chin. The silence in the room was thick, charged in menace. Shane, did you do everything exactly as I instructed? His voice was low, almost eerily composed. Milo, his most trusted but visibly nervous subordinate, stood stiffly in front of him. Milo, yes boss, every step has been executed precisely. No room for error. Shane slowly turned his head, eyes gleaming with a dangerous fire. Shane, I want no mistake this time. Do you understand me? Jungkook must not survive this time. I want his death to be final. No chances, no miracles. Milo swallowed hard. Milo, understood, boss. Everything is in place. It's flawless. A long silence followed, broken only by the ticking of a large antique clock. Then Shen stood up abruptly, his jaw clenched tight, fury dancing behind his eyes. His voice trembled, not with fear but with barely restrained rage. Shen, they will pay, all of them. I will make them watch each other die. I will erase that entire bloodline from this world. That's the only way to end this. His fist clenched, the knuckles turning white. The memory of humiliation still burned like acid in his veins. Then a twisted smile curled across Shane's lips, a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Shane, so it's time for a family reunion," he said darkly. "Let's see how it feels when death knocks on every door they love." And then he laughed, a deep, terrifying, inhuman laugh that echoes through the halls like a storm brewing at sea. Milo froze, every hair on his skin standing on end. There was madness in that laugh, and it was just the beginning. The morning sunlight filtered softly through the windows as one stood in the kitchen, humming quietly while stirring a fragrant pot. The aroma of freshly cooked spices filled the room, warm and comforting. Somi leaned on the kitchen counter, watching with wide, admiring eyes. "Somi, wow, you cook so beautifully. How did you learn to do all this?" she asked, her voice tinged in a way. Wine looked up and smiled, the warmth of nostalgia flickered in her gaze. "Wine, I used to cook little by little when I was younger. I learned everything from my father." Somi blinked in surprise. "Somi, really? Uncle knew how to cook. How came?" "Wine, my father owned a cafe," she explained, still stirring gently. "He managed everything on his own. Now I run it." Somi's eyes widened in further. "Somi, that's amazing. You are so independent." Wine chuckled at Somi's dramatic expression and continued cooking until everything was done. She carefully packed the meal into a neat tiffin box. Somi watched curiously. "Somi, you are going now?" Wine nodded as she closed the lid. "Wine, yes, it's time. Somi, I told Ben to take you," she added. "Be careful, okay?" "Wine, I will," she said softly, giving her a small smile before leaving with the tiffin box in hand. At the hospital, the sterile quiet of the hospital was broken only by the rhythmic beep of machines. Jungkook lay motionless on the bed, eyes half open, staring at the ceiling. His mind drifted in a fog of painkillers and memories. The door opened and Wine stepped inside with gentle steps. Jungkook turned his head slowly toward her. His eyes lit up just slightly. He tried to speak, but his voice caught in his throat. Wine said nothing. She simply walked to the table, took out the tiffin box and opened it carefully. Then she poured warm soup into a bowl, lifted a spoonful and brought it gently to Jungkook's lips. He obeyed silently, never taking his eyes off her. With each spoonful, he felt something loosen in his chest, not just the hunger, but the quiet longing that had haunted him in her absence. Wine didn't speak, she just fed him with quiet precision, her expression unreadable. When the bowl was empty, she wiped the edge clean, packed her things, and stood up. Jungkook's voice was hoarse. "Jungkook, won't you stay a little longer?" Wine didn't look at him. "Wine, no." She turned and walked out, her steps silent. Jungkook watched her go, a sinking ache blooming in his chest. He wanted to rise, to reach for her hand, to ask her to stay, but his body would not let him. He closed his eyes, feeling the hollow space she left behind, and the silence in the room deepened. Days has passed, quietly yet heavy. One still visited Jungkook in the hospital, but she never truly spoke to him. Her words were minimal, her eyes distant. Jungkook, although recovering well, felt the chill in her silence more than the pain in his own. At home, the atmosphere had shifted. Somi and Wayan had taken over the responsibilities of the mansion. The staff followed their lead, and despite the storm that loomed on the horizon, the house remained in order. But Jungkook's focus was somewhere else. He had finally found Shen. The man who had thrown apart so much was no longer a ghost, and Jungkook was done waiting. In his private hospital room, he held a meeting with his man. Plans were unfolding, strategies taking form. The strike was coming. Back at the mansion, the house was unusually quiet. Most of the guards had been resigned to the upcoming mission. Inside the nursery, Wan and Somi sat on the soft rug, playing with the children, their laughter soft and innocent. Then the silence shattered. Gunshots echoed like thunderclaps through the hallway. Somi jumped up in alarm, running toward the door. As her hand touched the handle, it burst open violently. A masked man thrown in. Before either woman could scream, rough hand clumps chloroform soap rose over their mouths. Once eyes widened in horror, she fought to stay conscious, but the foams were too strong. The world around her spun into darkness. From behind, another man entered, tall, cruelly grinning, his eyes burning with revenge. Shane, Shane, well, he sneered, stepping over the fallen toys. After so long, what a sweet reunion. He snapped his fingers. Shane, let's go, boys. It's time to begin our party. The masked man dragged the unconscious woman toward the waiting vehicles. Another carefully lifted the children, terrified, crying, but too small to resist, and just like that, they were gone. At the hospital, Jungkook sat at the head of his bed, surrounded by his core team. Maps were spread before them, weapons lined the shelves. The room buzzed with tactical discussions until the door slammed open. A bloodied guard stumbled in, clothes soaked with crimson, a bullet wounded tearing through his side. Guard, boss, he gasped, voice trembling. The mansion is under attack. Jungkook's breath coughed in his throat. He rose from his bed instantly, his eyes darkening with fury. Jungkook, who? He demanded. The guard coughed, choking on his own blood. Guard, Shane and his man, they took everyone. The words hung in the air like a curse. Jungkook's heart thundered in his chest. Everything inside him stirred, then burned. Before he could say another word, the guard collapsed, lifeless. Jungkook clenched his fist, his knuckles turning white. There would be no more waiting, no mercy. This was war.